Hello everyone, my name is Asisipho Mbingeleli and welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video guys, we are going to be answering this human eye question from a previous national paper. We know how important this section is. Obviously this content is covered in paper 1 or is assessed in paper 1, and it's from the topic responding to the environment by humans. So let us look at this question. We are given an eye diagram, so let's break it down. So the diagram below shows the structure of the human eye. Study the diagram and answer the questions that follow. So straightforward, this is a human eye diagram. We are given about 4 labels, so they'll obviously probably ask us about these given labels. 221, explain the structural suitability of part C and a mark allocation of 2 marks. Remember, when you are asked to explain, you must structure your answer in a way whereby you have the cause and the effect in order for you to get the 2 marks. Now, in order for us to explain the suitability of part C, we first need to identify, me and you, what part C is, which is obviously the yellow spot. The question did not ask you to identify, but for you to know, you need to do this in order for you to know which label or which structure you are basically being asked about, right? So in a test or an exam, there's no need for you to first identify the structure by writing it down. Identify it in your mind, or you can make a note on your question paper. Do not answer it on your answer sheet, please. Okay, so we know that is the yellow spot, and that is where we find the highest concentration of our cones, which are the photoreceptors, right? And they basically create the most clearest vision. So that's what we are having here as our answer. So structural suitability, it has the highest concentration. So the yellow spot has the highest concentration of cones, which are obviously the photoreceptors, and they're there to do what exactly? To create clearest vision. How will this be marked? Remember, cause and effect, 2 marks here. So 1 mark for highest concentration of cones, we know that, and they are there to create the most clearest vision. Okay, then we move to the next question, 2.1.2. 2.1.2, a man is looking at a distant tree. This information is important. A man is looking or was looking at a distant tree and then decided to watch a TikTok video on his phone. So firstly, he was looking at a tree, which is obviously at a distance, and then decided to watch a video, a TikTok video on his phone. So they've given us that scenario, right? Now they are asking us to identify the letter and the name of the part of the eye that will be adjusted so that he can see his phone clearly. So now this takes us back to accommodation, guys, and the part of the eye that will be adjusted to accommodate now the difference in distance, more than 6 meters away or at a distance, which is the tree, and changing to watch, the distance changes because now this man is now watching a video on his phone, and his phone is very close to him. It's less than 6 meters away. So obviously the structure or the part of the eye that is going to be adjusted is the lens, which is A. So they've asked us for the letter and the name. So the letter is A and the name is lens. Now, very important for you to look at these questions, guys, especially these ones. So they can sometimes ask you for the name only. Sometimes they can ask you to write down the letter only. Sometimes they ask you for both. They ask you for the name and the letter. And sometimes learners miss this one. You end up writing the name only or the letter only. Read the question twice so you don't end up losing marks. Okay. Then 2.1.3. There you go. 2.1.3. The phone brightness. I love this question. Remember here we were speaking about accommodation. Right, let's read this question. The phone brightness setting was high while he was watching the TikTok video. So the man is now watching a video on his phone, a TikTok video, and the phone brightness was high. Bright light. What is this giving us? It's giving us bright light information, right? Name and describe. We first need to name, and then we describe the mechanism of the eye that would allow a person to still be able to watch this video despite the brightness setting. Now, we already know that the mechanism here would be pupillary mechanism. We know that. So we need to name the mechanism, which is pupillary mechanism. Remember, you have accommodation for the distance, and there you are looking at the lens and the suspensory ligaments and the ciliary muscles, right? Then pupillary mechanism, you are speaking about the radial and saccular muscles. Then you speak about what happens to the pupil, and then you speak about the amount of light that enters the eye. All right, so now we've answered the first part of the question. We need to answer the second part of the question, which is to describe now pupillary mechanism. But now this is pupillary mechanism under bright light. Remember, with pupillary mechanism, the stimulus is light intensity. And now they've told us that the brightness settings were high. So that is bright light. Now, in this case, how are we going to describe now? And how many marks? 4 marks. So that means the first mark will actually be for naming, which we've done. And the next 3 marks are going to be for us describing. So the first thing that we speak about is the muscles. And we have 2 types of muscles there. You speak about the radial muscles. And these radial muscles are going to relax. Let me write it in full. Radial muscles of the iris are going to relax, and obviously what will happen to the saccular muscle? It will be the opposite, right? So then the saccular muscles of the iris are then going to contract. They work in opposite manner. Contract. Then what will then happen to the pupil? It is going to constrict. Remember now, the light is very bright. So the pupil will constrict. And what will happen to the amount of light that is entering the eye? It is going to be reduced. So that means the amount of light entering the eye is reduced. How will they mark this? Let me show you quickly. Let me use a very different color. We named the mechanism. There's the 1 mark. Then the 3 marks is for the other points. Any 3 marks. Please make sure that you do not confuse saccular muscles with ciliary muscles. Those are the ones that we find in the ciliary body, and we speak about them when we speak about accommodation. All right. Then the last question. Glaucoma is an eye condition that is characterized by high pressure in the eye. If left untreated, it can damage the part that takes impulses to the brain, which can result in blindness. Give the letter and name of the part that can be damaged. So they tell us about this eye condition, which is characterized by very high pressure in the eye. But now, if it's not treated, it can end up damaging. This is the key part of the question, right? It can end up damaging the part that takes impulses to the brain. Now, you obviously need to know which part that is. So if the impulses are not transmitted to the brain This means a person can obviously end up being blind. Now, the question is asking you to give the letter and the name of the part that can be damaged. Which part is this? The one that takes impulses to the brain. Let's go back to our diagram. Remember, the impulses will need to be transported or not transported. Don't say that. Transmitted, sorry. They will need to be transmitted to the brain by this nerve over here, which is the optic nerve. So the stimulus will be received by the receptors, and then those receptors are going to convert the stimulus into an impulse, and that impulse will then need to be transmitted by the optic nerve to the brain. And remember, we don't generalize. You don't just say the brain. You will have to be specific which part of the brain, which is the cerebrum. But they didn't ask us about that. So the letter in this case, we are answering our question, is D, and the name is optic nerve. If you haven't already, please remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel, share the link with your friends, schoolmates, and classmates, and also please comment down below.